Today I'm looking at a mid-tower case that's been sitting around unopened for ages. 2 years have passed and I haven't even looked at it yet. The case goes by the name of Cougar Duoface Pro RGB and it offers us users 2 faces. This refers to the front panel, which can either be out of glass or metal with ventilation holes in it. Both come included. Price-wise, assuming the case can still be found online, we are looking at roughly $80 US, and so the Duoface Pro RGB doesn't appear too shabby. That is even considering the features it offers. However, I'd also like to warn you right away that my particular case sample comes with 2 potentially critical defects. Now, does this Cougar case even stand a chance against its tough competition out there on the flooded PC case market? The scope of delivery includes, of course, the case itself, a box of accessories, as well as the aforementioned metal front panel. Out of the box, the glass panel is attached in front. I overall find the aesthetics fairly nice, although I'm not entirely sold on the design language here. But understandably, that's always a matter of personal taste. This model is also available in white, by the way. This case seems to be largely built fairly well, although there are a few aspects here and there where you can tell some costs were cut, but that's not that big of a deal, really. The Duoface Pro RGB deserves praise for the 4 pre-installed fans given the price point, all of which also feature RGB lighting. 3 of those are 120mm fans in the front and 1 at the rear. The Cougar logo at the bottom front part of the case is also illuminated. The rather large gap between the front panel and the fans ensures overall decent airflow. Regardless of whether it's the glass or metal panel, they are very easy to remove and are interchangeable. I do have to point out, though, that my metal panel doesn't really want to snap into place properly with those push pins, meaning that in the worst case, the panel could fall off. Definitely the first oversight as far as quality control is concerned at the factory. The glass side panel is attached with just a single thumb screw and is additionally held in place by magnets for the top portion. The side panel is easy and convenient to attach and remove. The solid side panel on the opposite side is screwed into place the ordinary way. On the front, between the fans and front panel, there's a dust filter that can slide out like that. A very user-friendly design indeed. At the top, of course, a magnetic dust filter and a small removable filter at the bottom for the power supply. What I find quite cool is that we can unscrew the case's top bracket, making it much easier to install fans and or a radiator. The same goes for the bracket at the front. By loosening 2 thumb screws, the front bracket for fans and radiators can slide out and be removed, allowing you to screw everything into place outside of the case. Although the dimensions of the Duoface Pro RGB aren't that over the top, the case offers a lot of room for hardware, supporting even a maximum of eATX and CEB motherboard form factors. Other than that, the features look great on paper too. Now, there aren't rubber grommets for each and every cable cutout hole, but there are some at the very top. I would have really welcomed a few more cutouts though. By the way, we can mount up to 2 120mm fans onto the PSU cover at the bottom. An RGB controller is hidden behind the other side panel. All fans, as well as the manufacturer's logo in the front, are already pre-connected out of the box. We even have 1 free RGB header left to make use of. And as is often the case, the reset button is sacrificed in order to switch between RGB effects. However, the lighting can also be synchronized with the motherboard. One negative thing I noticed about the fans, however, is that they aren't PWM, but rather sport 3-pin connectors. I wouldn't really call that going with the times, but fortunately, with modern motherboards, fans even with 3-pin connectors can be controlled in fan speed fairly decently. Furthermore, the fans are more than usable, drawing in and moving a decent amount of air, and their noise level isn't even unpleasant as far as I can tell. Now let's talk radiator support. You can mount up to a 360 or 280mm one to the top. The same applies to the front. up to 360 or 280mm. However, installing 360mm radiators to the top and at the front at the same time is not possible. CPU coolers with a max height of 190mm are supported, graphics cards with a length of up to 390mm, and power supplies with a max length of 200mm. 2.5-inch SSDs are traditionally mounted behind the motherboard tray, a maximum of 2. However, we are given just as much space for two 3.5-inch HDDs. By loosening a thumb screw, the hard drive cage can be pulled out and the HDDs screwed into it. I also noticed that the HDD cage can be installed on 2 different rails, probably to allow for more space for the PSU and its cables if necessary. The I/O on the Duoface Pro RGB is exemplary. Not only do we have 2 USB 5GB and 1 USB 2.0 port, but also a USB-C 10GB port. Of course, the case also allows for vertical graphics card installation, although as always, the required riser cable for that is not included. 3 vertical additional slots are there ready to be used if you decide to. The case also offers a GPU holder to support heavy graphics cards, although the holder is only adjustable in height and not in angle. Nonetheless, a welcome addition. Equally welcome is the cable cover, which allows to be moved slightly further to the right if necessary by loosening 2 screws. Then again, you could also remove the cover completely. However, I must admit that the cables could end up getting crushed more than I'm used to, sometimes in awkward positions depending on the hardware used. I'd also like to point out that the front panel audio connector not only has a non-connected cable dangling around, but also no way of connecting that loose cable. That would be the second oversight as far as quality control at the factory is concerned. Apart from that, how did the installation of hardware into the Duoface Pro RGB go? As a matter of fact, it went exceptionally well and smoothly. Of course, if you wanted to install bulkier, beefier setups in there, I'd recommend simply removing the cable cover on the right to allow for more space, which would obviously have some cosmetic consequences. Radiators can be conveniently mounted internally or externally, and since the mounting holes are offset, there are no clearance issues with motherboard heatsinks. While I usually lack the patience and, well, the necessary talent for it, cable management in the Duoface Pro RGB isn't particularly difficult, if I may say so myself. There are many mounting points where you can attach bundled cables, and those Velcro straps are, needless to say, quite helpful too. Conclusion. Well, what can I say? The Cougar Duoface Pro RGB is impressive overall. For the stated price of around $80, the offered features are neat. However, I'm less pleased with the defects found on my specific sample that clearly crept in during production. Both the metal front panel, which doesn't snap into place properly, and the front panel audio connector are a thorn in my side. The 3-pin fans also seem a bit strange, but fortunately, they are just as easy to control as PWM fans with modern motherboards. I assume that the defects mentioned are rare and I just got unlucky. Aside from the shortcomings mentioned, the Cougar Duoface Pro RGB case is still worth a recommendation. There's not much you can do wrong with it. Do you personally like the case I've taken a look at today? What do you believe is particularly good or bad? If you enjoyed the video, I'd be very happy if you gave it a like, but feel free to hit that dislike button if you feel like you have to. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and until the next one.